Good morning. Welcome to Hot Takes and Hot Cakes, the Sportable NFL show for Week 8. I'm Matt Harmon here with my man Dan. Dan, how are you doing this morning? I did not mean to rhyme that, by the way. That just kind of happened.
And we're sponsored by Sportable. That's who we're doing this for. So if you haven't checked out Sportable yet, and you just know me or Matt from our work on, like, for him, Football Guys or Backyard Banter, for me, Pro Football Focus or Fox, check out Sportable because we do pieces for them every week, me and Matt. So you may know from my writing, I'm not going to vouch for Matt's because some of his was a little more concise when I took a look at it, at least as far as the I'm sorry, what's the name of the reception perception series goes, but some of my writing can be lengthy. Sometimes I get into detail. For Sportable, that's completely cut out. So if you check out any of my cards on Sportable, which you can see on my author page there, it's all limited to a certain amount of characters, and that's kind of the idea behind Sportable. Get out the actionable information fast and quick, and don't mess around with a lot of stuff that could be useful, but could also drag. So check it out. You're going to just get actionable facts, and it's going to be quick stats hitting at you, ways to get you thinking about different things in fantasy football. We don't just touch upon like the normal things like, oh, the Bears give up the third most points in fantasy. Oh, really? Well, that's because they faced team X, Y, and X. So we're getting into matchups there and different kinds of stats. So check out Sportable. You can find it at www.sportable.is. Matt, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I think the great part about Sportable as a writer is you get to be concise. You get to keep it to those limited characters, which is nice for us, and it's also nice. It's nice for the readers to get the information real quickly. We pump a lot of work from a lot of different sites, and that's another great part about Sportable. It's really great for the community to get all that information out there in one place that looks really sweet on your mobile device, because we're all on the go today in this society, and so Sportable's a great a great piece for that. And without any further ado, without any more fluffing our sponsor here, we'll get right into this week's show. And we'll start off with a few questions. And our first two questions come from @BallIsTim, who's one of our most faithful listeners who always asks us some great questions. He actually, and what I like about Tim is that he uses the hashtag in his questions. So you just find him right by going on the hashtag hot takes and hot cakes hashtag, and his questions are right there. So we'll start right off with those two. First one that Tim asked us: Bradshaw or McKinnon, 10-team non-PPR. Dan, I'm going to throw for some of our talks during the week. I'm going to throw this one right to you because I think I know where you're going to go with this, but maybe you'll surprise me.
There's no surprise here, Matt. You know exactly where I'm going to go. This will take a little thunder out of a matchup I'm going to get into a little bit later on the show, but I'm going McKinnon, and I'm going McKinnon in every single daily fantasy league I'm playing in. That's FanDuel and DraftKings this week. I absolutely love this matchup with McKinnon. So we're matching up with a Vikings team that's struggled in recent weeks thanks to their interior offensive line, but that's fine because they get to match up with this Buccaneers defensive line that does have Gerald McCoy, who's been a pretty dominant force. But aside from McCoy, they've been really, really weak against the run in particular over the last 3 weeks. The beginning of the year, they were a solid unit against the run. They were kind of buying into Lovey's scheme. But as things have deteriorated with this scheme, and as you watch in the last Buccaneers game, and they kind of just played 8 to 10 yards off the ball, and Baltimore's just hitting slant after stretch zone play after stretch zone run play. It was hard to watch. And I mean, the real problem is they have Akeem Spence and Clinton McDonald playing the other defensive tackle spot next to McCoy, and neither of them is truly built for a one technique and a 4-3 defense, and they're just getting blown off the ball consistently. And then at right end, Michael Johnson, who had been known in Cincinnati for his run defense, has been really beat up a lot, beat off the ball. He has not graded out strongly according to Pro Football Focus in run defense. And a lot of teams are getting a lot of yards running off the left tackle and left end. So I think that the Vikings will see a lot of easy holes for McKinnon. He's going to get a ton of holes. He's going to get plays out in space where he can get isolated against one of the linebackers. It's not Levante David. So they haven't been back in corps either. So really, this is the Buccaneers defense that hasn't been good at anything. I mean, they haven't been good at rushing the passer or pass coverage either. But in recent weeks, it's been that run defense that's been bad. And I think Minnesota finally has that advantage on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. McKinnon's just going to go nuts today. I'm saying right now, I think it's like 125 plus combined receiving and rushing with at least a touchdown. I'm all in on McKinnon this week.
Yeah, and you know what? I like a lot of what you said, and I'm using McKinnon in several daily leagues because he's super cheap on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And so I totally agree with your analysis there. But I'm actually going to I'm going to present the opposite side of this equation because Dan and I agree Dan and I agree on this show too much because we're smart and we're both smart guys. But so I'm going to present the case for Bradshaw. Trent Richardson is the starting running back for the Colts or whatever. But we know Bradshaw's their best player. Richardson also is not completely healthy. He's had some. Indianapolis is really. They don't tell us a lot about their injuries, but it doesn't look like Richardson's going to be 100% at least if he does play. And the Steelers have a really poor run defense. They don't, use Bradshaw much as a rusher on normal days, and that's smart because, we know about his durability, his injury history, but they use him so much in the red zone that he scored. I don't know what the exact number of touchdown passes he has scored or touchdowns in the red zone he has scored, but it's a lot. So in a non-PPR league, I like to go with guys that I think are going to score touchdowns, and I think Bradshaw is good for at least almost guaranteed for at least one touchdown. And as far as McKinnon goes, I think that's some really quality thoughts you had there on him. But I will say I was on my weekly during the week podcast with Leo Howell, my man there. As much as we bicker back and forth about fantasy strategy, he's great to have on the podcast, and he was telling me that while kind of what you said earlier, that the Bucs are better against the run than they are the pass. I mean, that's not saying much because they're pretty terrible against both, but he's actually more encouraged to go with the cheapness of Teddy Bridgewater or Jarius Wright or even Cordero Patterson against the Bucs this week in daily leagues, going with maybe that cheap stack over going with McKinnon because McKinnon seems like the easier call. And I'm sure we'll talk Bridgewater later, but he's also insanely cheap on FanDuel. EJ Manuel costs more money than Teddy Bridgewater this week, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later with TJ. So that's just kind of both sides there, Tim. So you can choose between both I think both are really great plays this week. As a flex or even a running back two this week. So Dan and I maybe disagree a little bit, but both kind of come to the conclusion that I don't think he'll be hurt whichever way you go. Okay, so that's Tim's first question. His second question that he has here is Graham or Clay, 10-team non-PPR, and I guess he's asking us Jimmy Graham or Charles Clay. And I'll set this up as someone that was burned by Jimmy Graham last week. I mean, we heard all the dialogue back and forth about, how last year he played those limited snaps. He only played in the red zone, and he still scored 2 touchdowns on his 3 targets, and he caught them all, and he scored 2 touchdowns. We heard that all week long, but also you kind of had to know if you didn't know that this was a possibility that he might score 0 points. I think you were being foolish last week. I mean, so you had to knowingly go into a thing that I might take a 0 this week, and it had to be worth it for you. So I knew that. I knew that was a possibility, and I went with it and took that 0. I ate that 0 hard, as I said on Twitter at one point. I ate it like it was my last meal. But so you take the 0 last week. Do you go back to Jimmy Graham this week, or do you go with a guy in Charles Clay who looks like he's finally getting healthy and also has a really good matchup against Jacksonville? Me personally, I go back to Graham. He's an elite player. He's 1 week removed from the injury, and I think at home in a really shootout sort of game against the Green Bay Packers, and there should be a lot of points in this game. This is where you want to start your players in fantasy. You want to pay up a little for these guys in daily leagues. So in this game, I'm going to go with Graham and hope that he sees a few more targets, catches one, maybe catches a touchdown in this game where the Saints are going to have to score a lot to keep up with the Packers. Dan, do you go with Graham, or do you maybe play it a little safer with Charles Clay in a good matchup?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in the same boat as you, Matt, and I am in the same boat as you again this week. In my big league, my biggest buy-in, my home friends, our league is going into year 9. It's unreal. The activity's amazing. We've got weekly power rankings. I don't want to get too much into it, but I think it's the best league on the planet. We'll see if that. There's no way for me to justify that or figure that out. But anyway, I've got Graham. I decided to take the plunge. This was the year I get the advantage at tight end, yada yada, and this asshole's just hurt. So I mean, I'm feeling the pain, and I didn't mean to call him. That's not his fault that he's injured. But point is, he was really never supposed to come back originally for 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, that was the latest report until he played. So I mean, maybe the blame was on us for jumping the gun and playing him, but that goose egg really killed my week. I ended up losing by enough points where if he just had a normal Jimmy Graham day, I would have won. Or if I had played the backup, who was Allen Robinson, which sucks because I had him in the lineup and I pulled him out at the last second. But anyway, back to this question. I'm going with Graham again. I'm just not the type of fantasy player that's willing to bench somebody like Jimmy Graham. I take the lumps. When he has these weeks, a 0-point week, it's okay for me because if he's not a little healthier, then I really don't know what's going on because a week should help him. He barely even played last week. He didn't get touched, so hopefully that shoulder's healthier. I can't bench him for somebody like Allen Robinson again, quite frankly.
Yeah, I hear you. That's the way I'd go too. You know, I know that there's. You have to know that there's that chance for taking the 0, but I still think it's better than going with Charles Clay. The ceiling is just higher for Graham, and I'm always the guy that chases the ceiling. So I think we both agree there that you go back to Graham this week, and it should be better than it was last week because we're a game farther from the injury. So we'll see what happens, but who knows? Okay, so here's another question. This comes from @JimGraham73. I'm assuming that's not Jimmy Graham, but hey. PPR flex. He's chasing Sanders and Hillman this week, so this really actually provides an interesting way for us to go about this question because obviously Hillman's and especially Sanders, they had those outbursts on Thursday night, and so he's chasing some big point deficit this week. So with that in mind, he wants to know whether he should start Crowell or Doug Baldwin in the flex, or does he drop Decker? Or does he drop Kyrie Robinson for Eric Decker, Devontae Adams, Justin Hunter, or another boom-bust type? So, all right. And there's a second part to this question, but let's tackle this part of it first because I think there's a lot there. So Dan, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start it off with just, if Eric Decker's on your waiver wire, you immediately cut Kyrie Robinson for him. First of all, Mark Ingram's back in the fold now in New Orleans, and Tavares Gadet is now getting about 18 to 22 snaps per game. So Kyrie Robinson's role is nothing really to get too excited about going forward. And without a real role, it's tough to have consistent fantasy value. You can see what's happened to Anton Smith for those who tried to pick him up and plug and play him, but he still plays his 10 snaps a game. And well, he had 1.5 last week. No shock to me because I've been tracking these snaps. But I mean, some people really thought he could be a guy for them. So I kind of put Robinson in that boat. He had I think he had 5. I think he only had 5 snaps last week. I got to double check that. I remember looking at that real quick. It was either 5 or 11. It was a really low number. He's out this week. He's injured. He says it's just a boo-boo. That's how he described it. But he's out. I don't know what that means, but he's out this week. Cut him immediately for Decker if you're listening to this and he's still on the waiver wire. Decker's only going to get better with Percy Harvin in New York. That's going to open up the entire offense, which will open up things for Decker and shift some coverages away from him. And I've been the biggest Decker fan for the past 4 years, really dating back to his days at Minnesota when I watched him in the Big Ten. I'm not changing. I think he's very, very underrated. I'm not going to go into the reasons why I think he's underrated, but I have some. But anyway, I'll tell the other part of the question. I love Doug Baldwin this week, so he's one of my favorite matchup plays this week. Matt is not going to like to hear this. He's a Panthers guy, but at the same time, I just got to take.
I don't care.
He doesn't care. Meanwhile, I might if you start talking crap about the Giants. But anyway, back to the question. So, I mean, this Panthers defense is in disarray. They're not the same without Greg Hardy. He was really a big part of what made them so good. They've graded out as the 6th worst team in pass rush this year on Pro Football Focus, and that's really indicative of what's going on with the entire defense without being able to generate the pass rush the same way they did last year. They've been worse in coverage, too. They're the 3rd worst unit there. So it's bottom 6, bottom 3 there. This is just, in my opinion, a pass defense that now you want to target on a weekly basis, which I never thought I would say about this Panthers defense. And you're looking at a guy, Baldwin, who had a team-high 11 targets last week. He turned them into 7 for a $123 and a touchdown. He's a really pretty good talent, and he's going to get a lot of Antoine Cason. He won't get him for the whole game, but even when he doesn't get Cason, he'll probably get, who is it, Melvin White? Matt, is that right?
Yep, Melvin White is the other.
Has he not been demoted yet? Okay, yeah, so White hasn't been demoted yet. Neither is Cason. They're both.
Although I'll mention this, not to cut you off, but Baldwin has been playing a lot more. He's going to play a lot more in the slot with Percy Harvin gone, and so he won't really see as much of those outside. At least this is just my thoughts. I could be wrong, but he's not going to see as much of those outside corners. But he's actually going to see whoever's going to play inside. Their rookie Ben Wicker is not going to. I don't think he's going to be playing. He's not back yet. Charles Godfrey was playing that spot, and he got cut.
Right? Yeah.
So it looks like James Dockery, who hasn't played really at all this year, is
Holy crap!
Yeah.
He was a Giant in like 200006.
I think that's Kevin. I think that's Kevin Dockery.
I don't know. I feel like it was James.
And maybe it was, but
I
thought James was kind of a younger player. But anyways,
okay. Maybe it's Terrell Dockery.
Either way, he sucks. So I mean, it doesn't matter. He's not a good player. So Baldwin will be matched up with him. So either way, that could be even better than matching up with those outside corners.
And I think he'll still see some matchups with the outside corners when they go 12 personnel or when they don't have 3 receivers in, which isn't too much of a staple of the Seahawks offense.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just a matchup I want to exploit, and I'm rolling with Baldwin. What's the? Do you want to touch that question, Matt?
Yeah, I won't get into much. I wrote a column about the Panthers defense this week for Black and Blue Review, so I won't get into. I'll wait till we preview that game to get into more of what I saw from there, and didn't see a lot of good stuff. Yeah, so I go with Baldwin too. I like Crowell as kind of a desperation upside play against the Raiders, but Baldwin just has, he's pretty much the top target. I'm not going crazy with Baldwin for the rest of the season. I don't know if he's suddenly a wide receiver 1 or 2, but in this matchup, I definitely think that it's someone you can use to exploit. And then the second part of the question was, do you drop Kyrie Robinson for Eric Decker, Devontae Adams, Justin Hunter? And just like you said, if Eric Decker's on your waiver wire, then yeah, I think you go with you get him immediately because he is a number 1 receiver in his offense. Percy Harvin, while he might not be, I don't think he's going to be that productive in New York. We kind of talked about that last week. I don't think he's going to be that productive, but I think he's going to open things up for other people, and that's mainly going to be Eric Decker, who has been really good when he's healthy. When he's been healthy this season, he and Geno have had a connection. Geno has relied on him. So I'm definitely want to chase Eric Decker, even though I really like Devontae Adams. I think, and maybe we could talk about this a little bit too, because he mentioned Justin Hunter, and I would rank them going forward as Eric Decker, gap, Devontae Adams, big gap, Justin Hunter. So I don't know if out of those 3 options, and maybe we can talk about this with Justin Hunter. I saw a lot of people, a buzz on Twitter about Zach Mettenberger becoming the starter in Tennessee, and how that this is gonna, finally save Justin Hunter's fantasy value and blah blah blah. What do you think about the Titans naming Mettenberger their starter?
So I'll say a few things on this. I mean, I'm torn on this because I actually wrote a little bit on Mettenberger this offseason. He was one of the quarterbacks I got a chance to watch a lot of games of over on Draft Breakdown. I actually really like what I see from Mettenberger. To me, I think he gets lumped into this conversation as just this big Kerry Collins type pocket passer. But while he doesn't have good pocket movement, he's actually a more accurate rhythm thrower than you'd think he would be. You'd think he'd kind of just be this luggy guy who just drills in passes. But I mean, like, when he gets in a rhythm, he's hitting balls on the money. They're spot throws. Like, he was putting it right where Beckham and Landry needed the ball to be last year with LSU. So, and the thing with Mettenberger that I really like is I watched one game. It was only one of his junior year game, or not junior, the year before this year, the 2012 game, and I watched 4 of his 2013. And the difference that in his play from that year to the 2013 was unbelievable, and it was obvious to me that it was the difference of Cam Cameron coming in as offensive coordinator. Obviously, Cam Cameron had a rough time with the Ravens, and the end of his tenure there was really bad. He was pretty much just running like slants every play. It was ugly, but it was predictable. But he brought his pro-style offense to LSU, and Menberger just looked much, much better and much more comfortable. And that's kind of like an offense that similar, at least more similar to the Titans' offense now than what he would have been in his 2012 year. So I actually really like Menberger. I think they have the line to make it work. He needs an offensive line to be good in the NFL. He has no shot without one. It's kind of like Eli Manning in that sense. He has no escapability. So I do like him, but like any rookie, I want to temper my expectations, especially one that hasn't taken the practice reps all preseason and just started taking first-team reps now. That's never a great sign. Any half-smart defensive coordinator can just go ahead and blitz the line of scrimmage, crowd the line of scrimmage, and overwhelm him. So, yes, I'm going to temper my expectations there. And I haven't seen enough from Justin Hunter from a route-running perspective to really get on board with him. I haven't loved what I've seen from him. He can run the go route, of course. I don't see too many really good breaks on in routes, and I don't really see too many deep posts he's running or anything really out of the ordinary. Comebacks he's not doing well with. So I don't love Hunter. I would do the same exact ranking as you. I just think I would have Hunter a little closer just because there is some upside to me with Menberger, who I think within a few weeks will be better than both Locker and Whitehurst in offense. How about you, Matt?
I'm not a Mettenberger fan. I think that some people do get caught up in that he's this big arm pocket passer. Just to me, I don't really care for that type of quarterback. I wrote up a quarterback typology on Backyard Banter. People can check that out if they want. I just came up with typological names for all sorts of quarterbacks in the NFL. And the dinosaur was one of them that I graded Mettenberger into. And I just don't think that type of quarterback really succeeds in the NFL at this point. And I don't think that he's going to, just because he had a few good preseason games, I don't think that suddenly means he's going to step right into the NFL and make it work for Justin Hunter or any of these other guys. I don't see him as a savior. I see him as really like a project type of guy. I didn't think his accuracy was really good at LSU. I think he benefited from having two guys in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham who could really win contested catches. And he really had that attitude of just, oh hell, I'll just throw it up and these guys will go get it. And it worked in LSU. Probably isn't going to work as well with guys like Kendall Wright or Justin Hunter or Nate Washington. We'll see. Maybe there's some upside there, but I tend to doubt it. Oh, my God. Sorry about that. I had a little guest jump in there with me. But
taking the headphones with you.
Yeah, right. But I guess he doesn't agree with me about Zach Mettenberger. Charlie is a fan of Charlie Whitehurst, obviously. So that's why he's upset about this segment. But anyways, so back to my point here. I don't think Mettenberger is some sort of fantasy savior. I don't think he's going to be that successful of an NFL quarterback. But so I'm not optimistic about that. But that's kind of off track to the question. Anyways, so I think what we both kind of agree is that you find a way to get Decker on your team, and you definitely start Doug Baldwin this week. So that's that part of the question. Real quick, last one from me that I got, and then we can get into ones you got. This one comes in from @VOsborne_3. He asks us, Sanu or Quick? I've really been struggling with this one all week long, and I have no other options. So, Dan, Sanu or Brian Quick?
This one.
Which way are you going?
This one's very tough for me. So I have a feeling the game flow in the Cincinnati Ravens game is going to be miserable for the Bengals. We'll touch on this in a little when I get into that matchup, but I just have a feeling we're going to see something like 36 to 40 minutes of time possession for the Ravens, even in Cincinnati, even though the game was close last time. And a lot of that reason the game was close, and the other reason the Bengals won that first game was because of AJ Green, who's going to be out this week. So I just have a bad feeling about offensive possessions for the Bengals. Now, does that mean Sanu can't cash in on his limited possessions? No, because he can. He'll be the number one target again. And then we look over on the other side, and I think that the Rams will have a almost identical problem to the Bengals as far as time possession goes. I think the Chiefs, how they beat the Chargers was playing Chargers ball, basically. They controlled the clock, kept the ball, ran the ball well. Their offensive line is playing much better. So I think both teams will see limited offensive possessions. And I'm going to go with Sanu. I like how he runs. I like the routes he runs better. Quick is one of my favorite talents, and he can jump high, he can run, he's explosive, but I don't know. It seems like they've only really used him on a limited number of routes, and he's only really making big plays recently, which I don't know if that's the scheme of the offense or if that's that he's actually a talent limit to only that right now. I think I tend to believe it's more a factor of the offense. I've said this before. I think Brian Schottenheimer is one of, if not the worst offensive coordinator left in the league right now. A lot of people agree with me on that.
I plus one.
Yeah, we can plus one that. I mean, it's embarrassing. And so I'm going to go with Sanu. It just seems like neither is going to get too many possessions on offense, and I'll take the guy who can catch more passes. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I actually am going to go with Brian Quick here. Sanu has had the better last few weeks, but except last week where, honestly, the whole Bengals offense went up in flames, man. I mean, it was disgusting against the Colts. Yeah. I kind of see this as a similar sort of game against the Ravens, like you mentioned. I don't think the game flow is going to be very good for either side, really, for the passing game. Maybe not as much for the Ravens' weapons, but especially for Sanu. AJ Green, is he definitely out, or is that still kind of?
It's not definite right now. It says he's leaning towards sitting out Week 8 and playing Week 9. That's the most recent report.
Okay, so that doesn't really change much if Green doesn't play. If Green does play, obviously you give Sanu a big downgrade. I'm going to go with Quick because honestly, he had those great first 3 weeks. And then during his bye week, I wrote him up for reception perception, talked about how excited I was for him, how great he was grading out, and all of those numbers that I have there. And then he kind of disappears after that, which, hey, go figure. It always happens when you write something positive about a player breaking out, and then they kind of disappear. But anyways, not to complain about the struggles of being a fantasy football writer. But, yeah, so I think that Quick kind of bounces back this week. He's had a few down games, they haven't really needed him as much. They didn't really need him as much against the Seahawks because they had those special teams plays and all the other stuff going on. They didn't really need him. The Rams just couldn't get anything going against the 49ers. So I tend to think that Quick comes back this week and has a nice game. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with that side of things. And again, we disagreed, but I agree that I don't see a big separation maybe between the two. But I am going to go with Quick.
We'll see who's right next week. We'll review.
Absolutely. So, and Dan, any questions on your end that you've got before we jump into matchups?
Actually, don't have any questions. Before we jump into matchups, I don't have any questions really coming in this week. I had a few earlier this week that I answered. They kind of all had to do with the Thursday night game, which was weird. So those have no relevance now. But I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll get into matchups, since I actually got to get off this call, unfortunately, guys, off this hangout a little earlier today. But I want to talk about this idea you mentioned a little earlier about how you don't like the type of quarterbacks anymore, the pocket throwers who have strong arm, hit the intermediate pass as well. So my whole thing is I'm still big, and I always have been and always will be, on the quarterbacks who can hit the 15 to 20-yard intermediate throws the best. I'm talking about the seams and the outs, basically. I think those are the two toughest passes in the NFL. Those are two passes that get you out of the third and longs. And if you deliver them with zip, of course, anyone can throw them. But if you throw Alex Smith type outs and seam passes, eventually they're going to get picked or tipped or incomplete. They're thrown for incompletion. So what is your idea behind you don't like these type of passers anymore, Matt?
Okay, so it's kind of complicated because, I wrote about like 5,000 words on this whole theory.
I'm gonna have to check it out. It's on Backyard Banter.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna tweet you the link.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna tweet you a link here in a few minutes. So this was something I did over the offseason. I sorted every quarterback in the NFL, or every starting quarterback in the NFL at that time, into categories, and then the draft prospects that we had this last year. And the types that I came up with were, and I'll just go through them briefly. The prototype, the Vic, which is, you can guess, is like the prototype is like that. He's Andrew Luck, the 6'5" big arm quarterback. who can withstand hits in the pocket. He really has great feet, can move around. The Vic, obviously, that's pretty self-explanatory. The athlete at quarterback, sort of Colin Kaepernick, RG3, those guys. And then there was the facilitator / distributor, which is, they might not have the biggest arm strength, but they can hit most of the throws. They can really manage. They can really distribute the ball well to a bunch of great targets and run it like Peyton Manning is now. He's like that high-end facilitator, distributor type. He at one point in his career he might have been a prototype, but kind of as his physical abilities have decreased. Drew Brees is another example, not the most physically gifted guy, but can really run an offense to a T. So I put that category. And then what I sorted Mettenberger into was the dinosaur type, which is, I think there's a big difference between that prototype, the guy who's big but has the big arm, but also they're more accurate, they're better at the mental side of the game, reading coverage is better, that sort of stuff, and they have where the dinosaur is, like you said, a sitting duck in the pocket. I don't think you can be that anymore in the NFL with the way line play has kind of fallen off, with the way defensive lines are so talented these days, and the way blitz packages are. I don't think you can be that dinosaur, the sitting duck in the pocket, and really thrive for long periods of time in the NFL. So that's kind of the difference there. And then the last two categories was just the game manager, which I think everybody knows what a game manager is at this point. It's been beat to death. And the gambler, which is what I put like a Johnny Manziel type into. They play outside of their physical abilities. They have that mindset where they're always going to, push the ball down the field. It's really long. That was a very brief, probably crappy explanation of it. But I'll send you a link, and you can tell me what you think about it that way. And so I'll put that out to you on Twitter here in a few minutes.
Nice. Cool.
But yeah, blah blah blah. It doesn't. I don't know how applicable it is to fantasy football, but I think there's some utility in it. It's a theory that I kind of that I pushed a while back and kind of want to get more into as we go through the season here. So just an interesting thought. That's kind of my thoughts on Mettenberger and
nice.
How that fits.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if he slots into that dinosaur category, or if you see a quicker release and something you may not expect it from him, because I did see some good film on him in LSU over the past year, so I'm interested to see this thing as well. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, certainly. And I should also mention that each one of the categories, they get like a high-end, middle, or low-end grade. So, while a dinosaur type can be, I put Eli Manning as that, dinosaur guy. Then that's not a shot at him because I put him as a high-end dinosaur. Those guys succeed, but a low-end dinosaur, somebody like Chad Henne, they are not successful. So, I think that's not a shot on Manning. I swear to God, I'm not.
We'll just get into the matchups. I don't need to touch on that one.
It's not a shot, anyways. But that's all I'm saying. I'm not being mean to you and your fanboyness. So.
I don't know. You could just look at the numbers this year. He's been pretty damn good aside from that Eagles game.
But that's my point. That's why it's not mean. I'm not being mean. I swear.
Okay.
All right, so let's get into matchups. You can kick this one off since I was just taking a perceived shot at your quarterback.
The first one I want to kick off with is Baltimore-Cincinnati. This is one I did a little bit of extra work on this week. I went back, I watched the game rewind of it, but then I also kind of looked into the PFF grades and the stats on a few of these games, on pretty much all of the Baltimore Ravens and Bengals games in the last 3 weeks, because I feel like it gives us a better perspective on these teams because there's injuries and things that have kind of contributed to where they are now. And I just see a Bengals interior defensive line that's just getting destroyed. So you have Geno Atkins, who's come back from an injury, and he's really not the same player that he was. He's playing starter snaps with Dematka Peko. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Dematka Peko.
Domata Peko?
Domata Peko? Okay, yes, that sounds right. Domata Peko. So, Peko had been a pretty decent player in the NFL up until now, but I think now it's starting to become obvious that it had to do with Atkins being such a dominant force at the 3 technique next to him. But, right now they're grading out as the 67th best and 71st best, and I'll say best with quotation marks, run defending defensive tackles out of 72 qualifiers. So they're the worst and the second worst and the 5th worst in the league. And Pro Football Focus's run defense grades, and that just gives you a snapshot of how they matchup against the linemen, that the offensive linemen they face in a given week, and if they're getting beat off the ball, and if they're getting any penetration or disrupting any run plays. And they're clearly not. I mean, last week they made Trent Richardson look so good. It was unbelievable how good he looked in the first half. He was just tearing them up, chunk yardage plays, just sifting through that sieve of a line. He looked kind of like his Alabama days. And I really don't see that changing against the Ravens mauling run blocking unit under Gary Kubiak. And like, we should have never. I didn't doubt this Baltimore running scheme. I mean, I bought into Bernard Pierce. I thought that was the move this offseason, but Pierce just doesn't look anything like he did his rookie year, and it turned into Forsett. But I mean, this is a running offense that hasn't really failed. He brought it to Houston, and they were dominant for years as a run. And it's just a zone blocking scheme with a run focus that really works. And they're the second best run blocking unit according to Pro Football Focus this year. And they're led by their two guards, Marshall Yanda and Kelechi Osemele. Both of those guys, Yanda has been playing. Osemele has been out the last week or two. Osemele's back this week. He's going to be huge for them. So Yanda's been the best run blocking guard according to Pro Football Focus, and Osemele's been the fourth best despite missing a game or two. So really, it's been unbelievable. Nathan Jonke, a guy from Pro Football Focus, pointed out an awesome stat. Forsett, when he's run between the guards behind these two beasts, has 272 yards and 41 carries for 2 touchdowns, averaging 6.63 a carry behind these guards. And that's the highest rate for any player, any running back behind 2 guards with at least 20 carries in the league. Obviously, it's unbelievable. So I just see a lot of these runs off between the guards this week, just through gaping holes. And I think Forsett's going to tear it up. Now, the problem with Forsett and his ceiling is that he hasn't caught any passes over the last 2 weeks, and I'm not sure if he's even been targeted. He wasn't targeted last week. That's a huge negative in PPR leagues these days. And he doesn't really get the touchdowns. They grind it out with Pierce down there in the goal line. But I honestly think he'll break off a 15 to 25-yard touchdown this week to go along with like 100 to 125 yards. In his first meeting, the first game of the season, when he was really just coming off the bench as a role player, he had 11 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. He also had 14 receiving that game. So I really like him. And then I really just like this entire Ravens offense because I think they'll have the ball, as I mentioned earlier, for like 40 minutes of the time possession. So I'd roll Flacco out. I'd roll Torrey out. I would also roll Steve Smith out. I loved rolling Daniels out earlier because this Bengals linebacking unit hasn't been covering the tight ends well. But now Daniels got his knee scoped, and I'm shying away from him. I think that I'm not going to say play him, but keep an eye on Crockett Gilmore.
Gilmore.
Yeah, keep an eye. He's starting to make some headway in that tight end battle, and Daniels really is not himself. Gilmore could step up there. They need tight ends to make this offense work. And this is a great matchup. I think he could have a few big plays in this one. On the other side of the ball, I don't like the Bengals have the ball on offense too much. Their offense hasn't been the same without A.J. Green. They're not making big plays. I would bench Dalton. I'm not big on Gio or Hill this week. And Sanu is an interesting play just because he's going to get a lot of volume, but I think he's going to get a lot of volume per offensive touch, but I don't think they're going to have the ball that much. So that's kind of my wrap-up on that game.
Yeah, we'll keep these matchup segments, a little rapid fire since you've got to go here soon. So I'll just add a few things to that. I agree with a lot of what you said. One thing I'll add, I had a dream last night that Bernard Pierce got traded to the Rams. I don't know why. Obviously,
they need another running back. Of course.
Right, yeah. Obviously, that did not take place, so disregard.
Are you sure?
That.
Can we check Roto-World real quick? Oh, dude, Bernard Pierce on his way to the Rams for a 5th-round conditional pick.
Hey, if that did happen, I could quit this fantasy and go into the business as a psychic. But
yes, for sure.
We'll see. I guess that obviously did not happen to this point, but hold out hope. No, but for real, I think the good thing about Forsett is that he did catch a lot of passes, as the in the early parts of the year. So I think you kind of expect that little trend to reverse. And I also, you mentioned Crockett Gilmore. That's definitely a player to keep an eye on. We know Daniels is the starter while Pitta is out for the season, But Daniels is an older player. He's obviously this is not his first battle with the trainer's room. So keep an eye on Crockett Gilmore, who I thought was a really talented player coming out of Colorado State. I had him pretty good height in my draft rankings. So just keep an eye on him. He's a good fit in this offense. Maybe a sleeper in Dynasty going forward. But okay, with that, we'll go into the next matchup, and I have Seahawks and Panthers. Uh, just real quick, I mean, with the Carolina side, let's just get right into their offense. I'm not huge on Newton this week, though. I think you can start him. This Seahawks defense hasn't been what it used to be, but I still think I'm scared enough of them that if you have an option like Carson Palmer, I would bench Newton for Palmer this week. Cam was having like the best season of his career, but then he had one of those stinker games that he's used to having last week. I'm kind of trying to avoid another one of those, maybe against Seattle. And as far as the skill position goes, I'm playing Kelvin Benjamin, but I'm a little nervous if he gets matched up with Richard Sherman more often than not. That scares me. But he's just such a highly targeted player, it's hard to take him out of your lineup. I'm not playing any of the running backs, and you shouldn't either unless you're desperate. Stewart, maybe, if you're looking for a really cheap daily play, if you're punting the running back position, maybe you play Stewart, but I really hope you don't have to. It's just a situation I'm trying to avoid until someone emerges, and I don't think that's going to happen. And Greg Olsen, here's the difference between season-long and daily leagues. I mean, in season-long leagues, you got to play Olsen because he's the best player on the offense. You probably don't have a better option than Greg Olsen. He's having the best season of his career. He's been a really solid, consistent option in fantasy leagues. But in daily leagues, he's like the top price tight end, I think, on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Or I could be a little off there. He might be the second highest. But either way, he's top 2 tight ends. And like I know the Seahawks, I said they haven't been what they used to be or what they were last year on defense, but it's still not an option I'm like looking to exploit with Olsen enough that I won't pay a little less for an option that might score more than him. So if you're in a daily league, I say avoid Olsen. If you're in a season-long league, you probably have to play him. And then on Seattle's side, we touched on Baldwin earlier, and that kind of leads us to that this Panthers defense is bad. I wrote a piece on it for Black and Blue Review. I'll probably tweet it out as we get closer to kickoff because I love to share thoughts and everything. This Panthers defense is bad, and a lot of it has to do with those safeties back there. I mean, Dan, I'm telling you, I watched the film from the Packers game and several of the other games, Bengals, the Ravens. I'll tell you what, you do not know how many times you see Roman Harper take a terrible, terrible angle to the ball, and then Thomas Deku just like pitter-pattering up to come and like try and chip in with the tackle. It's pretty pathetic, honestly. And I work with Bill both there, and he's really got a lot of sources with the team, and he was kind of telling me that a lot of what you saw in that article, or a lot of what you saw in the film, what you highlighted in the article is what the team is saying as well. It's Thomas Davis said it, Sean McDermott said it. These guys aren't flying to the ball. That aggressiveness that they played with last year is not there. So it's a really interesting article, and I think it's in line a lot with what Carolina's seeing with their own team. So it's something maybe you should check out, everybody listening. So in that vein, I think you start all your Seahawks that are you start Wilson, you pay up for him in daily leagues, you start Marshawn Lynch against this defense that isn't playing. The defensive ends are really hurting the linebackers and everyone else because they're just not playing well. It's a mess. So you start your Seahawks this week, and even like a Jermaine Kearse type is a good desperation flex play, or a guy that you pay a little tiny salary for in daily leagues and maybe get some better production. I mean, I know it was Baldwin's turn last week in the absence of Percy Harvin, but it could very well be Jermaine Kearse that gets a score this week. We'll see. So, like I said, you exploit the you exploit this Panthers defense by starting your Seahawks. Do you have any thoughts on this game, Dan?
Yeah, we'll just go into my next matchup just because I'm running out of a little time, but I'll quickly touch on that. I actually kind of agree with you all throughout there. I mean, for all daily leagues and year leagues, I love targeting the Seahawks pass offense through desperation plays. That's Jermaine Kearse. That's guys like, if you're really deep and really down, Paul Richardson, but I think you can probably find Jermaine Kearse. I think you'll be fine there. So I love those calls, and it's interesting to just mention real quick how Greg Olsen, I think, is the number 2 tight end this year, which is awesome, behind only JT, Julius Thomas. So there's a million touchdowns. He doesn't do much else recently, at least. So anyway, let's get into the next matchup. Cowboys and Skins. I cover the two NFC East teams for Fox, so I'm a little closer tied to these teams. And this is a game I think, again, we're going to see dominated in game flow and time possession by the Cowboys. So for that reason, I'm not high on my Redskins. I'm not high on Garcon and Deshaun, despite the fact that they have good matchups against the Cowboys defense that, when tested last week in the passing game, failed miserably against the Giants. Unfortunately, for the Giants' sake, they tried to run the ball for the first 5 possessions out of tight formation. First down, second down, occasionally on third down too. That didn't work out too well. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, this is not an offense I'm excited about this week, especially with Colt McCoy at the helm. And at right tackle, they have a really, really bad matchup. The Cowboys have George Selvey, and Anthony Spencer's back, and he's playing 27 snaps a game and getting a good amount of pressure per snap. At right tackle, they have Tyler Columbus, who's given up 8 sacks, the most of any tackle in the league. They might have benched him this week for Compton. I think there's 2 Comptons. I think this one's Tom. There's Will, I think, who's the linebacker on this team, who stepped in for Keenan Robinson or for Perry Riley in the inside. Both players are miserable and just backups that have been killing them. So it's Compton. So it's either Compton or Columbus at right tackle. They'll get torched there. There's going to be pressure all game on McCoy. I don't like the matchup at all for him. What I will say about the Redskins offense before moving on quickly to the Cowboys is that a big call I'm making this week on Twitter, and you should listen for it here if you haven't heard it yet, is trade Alfred Morris now quickly before his value disintegrates. He still has some name value. I saw a friend pull off Michael Floyd for him, which I thought was great. Over the last 2 weeks, Roy Halou has seen more snaps than Alfred Morris, back-to-back weeks, and Roy Halou is just a better fit for this offense. He's a better fit for them when they're behind in games, which is most of the time. He's their passing down back. He's shown more burst in the open field. And Morris, remember, was kind of I'm not going to say he's kind of a product. He's a lot of his success came behind that Shanahan zone blocking scheme that's no longer there. They said they're going to keep a lot of those zone scheme concepts, but they clearly haven't as much. Gruden has a background in power running, so there's been more of those type of blocking schemes, and he hasn't been successful, Morris. He doesn't have much open field agility and burst, really, in my opinion. I'm just not big on Morris, so get rid of him while you can. Hallou's already seeing more snaps. On to the other side of the ball, roll with your Cowboys. They're going to have the ball the whole game. Des Bryant should dominate. He's seen like 12-plus targets over the last 2 weeks. Terrence Williams will probably have a big play because that's what he does. Gavin Escobar, if they do decide to play him, he only played a season-high 26 snaps last week. If Escobar gets going again this week, he could be a nice desperation tight end play, Gavin Escobar, because the linebackers, like I mentioned for the Redskins, are really doing a poor job. Compton and Keenan Robinson at coverage over the middle. When they try to bring Merriweather down, he doesn't really defend the tight ends well either. So that's a good matchup for the Cowboys. They should look to exploit it. So Murray, obviously, we don't even need to touch on that. He's probably an amazing DFS play. So that's my take on the Cowboys-Redskins game. Do you see anything you want to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, 2 things I'll add. I agree with pretty much everything you said, avoiding most of my Washington players, except the one I will say is I am going to play Jordan Reed in a lot of daily leagues this week because the Cowboys are miserable against covering tight ends. And Colt McCoy, while I think he's still a terrible NFL player, he's got that noodle arm, and I think Jordan Reed's the guy who gets open first in that offense, and he'll get peppered with targets, I think. So I'm playing Reed this week, maybe even Niles Paul in daily leagues. So
I saw Reed's price tag, and it's cheap. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was intrigued by his FanDuel price tag, but I just have so much trouble investing in these guys in these games that I think are going to be dominated by the other team in time possession.
No, I understand that, and it's a little bit probably more of a tournament play,
yes.
Where you're hoping for upside as opposed to a cash game play.
Fair.
So we've discussed the difference between the two in the show. So that's probably you're right on that. It's riskier, but it's an upside play. And then the only other thing that I'll add is I'm definitely rolling. We don't talk about team defenses much on this show, but we will here. In daily leagues and even in season-long leagues, if you're streaming defenses, I think the Cowboys, despite all the trash they've taken, I think they're a good play this week. Like I said, Colt McCoy still sucks. So I think you definitely start them at home against this Washington offense. And that's all I have with that game. Dan, you want to give us your last matchup here, and then we'll get TJ on, and I'll maybe close out mine and talk daily stuff before you have to go.
Oh, yeah. So, guys, we're going to have TJ hop on in a minute. He'll kind of close out the show with Matt. I'll touch on one more matchup. Let me just throw out two fantasy defense streamers just while I'm here, while I like a lot this week on FanDuel and Kings. Chiefs defense is cheap. They're going to be at home against the Rams offense. That's a good matchup. And then you also got Cleveland Browns defense against the Raiders. I like them a lot too. They had a few interceptions last week against Bortles. Sorry, that was my roommate who just ran. He was smiling there, Matt. Yeah, my roommate just woke up. He ran across the room, so he's having a good time. We're all having a good time. It's football Sunday.
Love it.
Real quick, I'll just run through my last matchup. Minnesota, Tampa Bay. I already touched on why McKinnon is an incredible play this week, but I actually did a stack this week with Bridgewater, McKinnon, and Jennings, and Jarius Wright. I'm sorry. This is just like a tournament, throw it all away. Let's see what happens. They're so cheap type thing, and I just had stars at my other positions. So I love the Vikings offense to have the ball this entire game, like a 36-minute to 40-minute time possession, just running through this Bucs defense. I think there's an interesting stat that Pat Thorman of Pro Football Focus brought up is Tampa Bay is at the bottom of the league for plays given up per game, and Minnesota is actually running surprisingly, they're running 65 plus offensive plays per game, despite matching up with tough front fours like the Bills. They still got a lot off last week, so they're kind of running a higher tempo than we might have expected under Norv. So I really love the Vikings offense to just eat this week. They're one of my favorite tournament plays. So that's Bridgewater, that's Jarius, that's Jennings, and McKinnon. I love them all in tourneys this week. And that's kind of all I wanted to touch on in that matchup, really. I'm not big on the other side of the ball with Tampa Bay. I think Glennon could have some garbage stats, but aside from that, I'm not going too all in on there. Do you see anything you want to mention there?
Yeah, I agree that this Bucs defense is one that you can exploit. So definitely Patterson, definitely Jarius Wright. I'm not crazy about playing.
You like that?
Yeah, in daily. Well, we know I'm a big Cordell Patterson fanboy.
I am too from the talent perspective. Oh man, I hate his role right now in that offense.
Oh, believe me, nobody is more crushed about it than I am.
It hurt you to give him 2 jet sweeps a game, 2-3 jet sweeps a game. Can't hurt you, Norv. Just throw in a couple jet sweeps a game. Fake one.
Right, like it works every damn time. So maybe we continue to do it. I have my kind of little theory there is that I hope, or what I'm hoping is that this coaching staff has a lot of job security right now. So they're kind of just forcing Patterson to be a traditional wide receiver. They're kind of forcing that on him right now, so that hopefully he improves on his route running and actually becomes. Because I think from a talent perspective, he actually could be one of the best wide receivers in the game. He's got ball skills and everything like that. So
I think from a talent perspective, I think he could be one of the best. I'm sorry. That's exactly what you said. You're 100% right. I mean, this is a guy who runs close to a 4.4. He's huge. He can jump high. He has an explosive broad jump, and he's got unique change of direction ability that normally those guys who are big, tall, and can jump and run don't have. So it's he can be. The sky's the limit for this guy, and it's just surprising to see his slow transition into the NFL, progression through the NFL.
I mean, in the offset of the of reception perception, the 2 season-long articles that I wrote on Backyard Banter. One was on Jordy Nelson. That one's really come to fruition, projecting him as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. That's definitely looked good. The other one was that Cordero Patterson's going to be a breakout star. I did mention that it might not happen this year, but it will happen eventually. So that one hasn't looked so good.
Get him all right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I still think it's coming. It's
Me too. I do too.
Just might have been a week early. So, I mean a year early. Sorry, but yeah. So I think it's coming eventually. We'll see. Like I said, I think they're gonna force him to be a better route runner before he really has anything else. Before they give him all these jet sweeps and screens and all that crap. And I mean, it's going to hurt its fantasy value this year, but maybe long term it actually makes him a better player. I don't know. So we're waiting for TJ to come on here. Dan, I know you got to get out of here.
Unfortunately, guys, I got a train I got to catch to get somewhere. Don't want to be too late for that. I'm probably running a little bit late now, so I'll have a little run out. But Matt, can you handle this until TJ gets on for a little bit?
Yep, I'll yak about the
Touch on.
Cardinals.
You have one more, Matt, right? Yeah. So Cardinals Eagles. That's a big matchup, guys. You want to get a lot of guys rolling in that. I actually love Michael Floyd. I love that. No, let me just end it on this. I love that he's somewhat a contrarian play this week because people are not buying him after that Rotovo report that said they're going to spread the ball around. I wouldn't buy into that. He's got Kerry Williams this week, one of the worst cornerbacks in the league this year, aside from the one Giants game that was kind of just a weird game. So target Michael Floyd, target Palmer. I love both those plays this week. I love everyone in that matchup, the Eagles side of the ball too. That game's going to have so many offensive plays, so that should be a good one. I'll end it on this. I have Joique Bell in every big league I'm in, all three of them this year, and he has about 1 fantasy point so far through this stupid London game, so that's nice. Good job, Joique. Let's get some things going in the second half while I'm on the train and furiously checking my phone. It's been another good week for the Hangout. I'm looking forward to next week's. Matt, touch on this last matchup, then hopefully TJ will be on. He'll talk daily with you. TJ's great at that. He does it better than us. And it's been good again, guys. So hopefully more questions next week. This was probably our lowest question show, which is all right. I mean, we got to talk more matchups, which I'm good with too. We're here to do whatever you guys want. So let us know. Tweet at us. That sounds good to me. Matt, have a good week, man. Everyone else, good luck in fantasy this week. Peace.
All right, see you later, Dan.
Hey, Matt.
Okay, so just hope. Cardinals. So really, the great thing, like as Dan highlighted with this game, is that you have two really productive offenses and defenses that have some questions. The Eagles' defense has been pretty good fantasy-wise, getting big plays, sacks, interceptions, takeaways. They very well could have a few of those against Carson Palmer this week, but also their secondary isn't a great one. They have some trouble covering deep. They give up some big plays just like they make. So you can start guys like Michael Floyd. You can start guys like Andre Ellington with confidence. You can start Carson Palmer because I think this is a game that's going to have a lot of points. And so one thing that we've learned this year about in fantasy football is a lot of these ones with high projected point totals. You want to get players in that are playing in these games. So that includes a lot of your Eagles, a lot of your Cardinals. So let's go specifically on Arizona's side first. Arizona, they have Carson Palmer. Like I said, I think he's a start. I think he's a quarterback one this week. He's played really well coming off that nerve surgery, that injury that he had. It looked really scary there for a while. But even his first week back, he looked like he had some diminished arm strength, some concerns there. But kind of just like a Peyton Manning type, he's really learned. Looks like he's learning how to. Finally, it took a few years because his physical abilities have been declining for a while. It took a few years for him to get with the program, kind of learn, have his mind catch up to where his body is at this point. And it looks like it finally has happened. He's learning how to manage some of those physical decreases, and he's taking what the defense gives him. But then against Oakland last week, he really played well. He looked like his arm already was stronger than the week before. He was hitting some big throws, and he threw an interception. But at the same time, you got to kind of accept that with Carson Palmer. It's going to happen, and it's okay because he still makes those big plays down the field. He still has great weapons. John Brown is really coming on. Larry Fitzgerald is a declining player. His role is declining, but he's still a good option for Palmer's sake. And Michael Floyd, I think, is capable of being a wide receiver one any week, any given week, maybe not every week. But so Palmer is an intriguing option in this game. And then Andre Ellington, I think, this rash that has hit the running back position has just killed the value of a lot of guys. But I think Ellington is a survivor in this sense, in that he's one of the last running back ones left. I think fantasy owners are frustrated that he didn't get to score the goal line touchdowns, whereas Stephon Taylor did last week. I think that's kind of a fluke. Ellington even apparently came out and said that he wanted to get Taylor the goal line carries, the touchdowns, because he quote unquote deserved it for his hard work and everything. So that's nice to see from that's nice of Ellington. But I think that from a fantasy standpoint, Ellington's still the running back one there. He'll get those goal line touches, and also he did have over 100 yards and several catches and a bunch of receiving yards last week. He just didn't get the scores, so he still had a really big week. And I expect him to have a big week this time around too. He's, the Eagles are better against the run than they are the pass. They have a really ferocious defensive line, kind of an underrated unit there. But I still think you can exploit them with Ellington. I still think that he's the guy who's going to catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. He'll probably get that touchdown. That touchdown thing will probably reverse itself. So you can start Ellington with confidence this week for sure, and you can roll. Maybe if you're desperate, maybe you play Taylor. You want to chase those touchdowns, but I wouldn't. And as far as the receivers go, I think we kind of know how this story ends, and that is that. Michael Floyd's the number one receiver. We know that. He's the guy that has the highest weekly ceiling and the lowest floor. So out of anybody in the Arizona offense, you're playing Floyd for sure. He's the guy that he can get down the field. He can win on jump balls. He's a star in the making, in my opinion, in his third year here in the league. And I already think he has the best communication with Palmer. So he's a guy that he's going to see. He's going to see Kerry Williams a lot, as Dan mentioned. Even on the other side of the field, Bradley Fletcher is not a good player. The Eagles' best cornerback is Brandon Boykin. He plays a lot in the slot, and Floyd will hardly ever see any snaps in the slot. So you don't have to worry about that. Floyd is a big play this week. And as far as the rest of the receivers go, I think we know Larry Fitzgerald has the lowest ceiling and doesn't really have a high floor anymore, as you would expect. Maybe in PPR leagues you can still play him if you're desperate, but at this point in the year, I think we've kind of seen enough from Fitzgerald that we know that he's not a starter anymore in fantasy leagues. In this matchup, he's going to play the slot a lot, and as I mentioned, Brandon Boykin's their best slot corner, or their best corner, and he plays in the slot. So you're going to see a lot of Fitzgerald matched up with Boykin, and that's not good for him. He's going to have some trouble there, and he's just his role is declining. He's declining. Everything going on with Fitzgerald right now is something I want to avoid, and I could be wrong about that. He's still a Hall of Fame sort of caliber player, if not in the Hall of Fame, right on the fringe edges of it. So he could come out and have a big week. I could be wrong there, but and John Brown. We know John Brown is also is a low floor player, perhaps, but has this really nice ceiling because of his deep speed. He's been a really impressive prospect this whole year, and so I'm interested in GPPs, tournaments for daily leagues as a desperation play in season-long leagues. I think that maybe John Brown could have a nice week because he plays a lot on the outside as well. Whoever Floyd will draw Williams probably, which means Brown will draw Fletcher, or maybe the two will flip around a little. And I think that's really good for Brown. I think he'll get one of those big plays. He could score a touchdown. He's cheap on DraftKings. He's cheap on FanDuel. So it's a matchup that you can look to exploit. So I think that's good stuff there, with the Arizona passing offense. There's a lot to be had. On Philadelphia's side, Nick Foles is pretty cheap on daily leagues this week. He's one that I'm looking to roll with, maybe stacking him with Jeremy Maclin, who's had a lot of a lot of targets, and he's had some really productive weeks as well. So I think you can stack the two of them together, and in daily tournaments, and really really learn a lot there, to really get a lot of productive snaps and targets and yards, and maybe even a touchdown between the two there. As far as the running game goes, LaShawn McCoy, I think, is back. He showed us that against the Giants before their bye week. I think he's back. I think the offensive line is getting a little bit better slowly. I think that the trend is pointing up and up and up and up and up and up for McCoy, that I think you want to follow that as well. You want to get in on that now while he's still at a pretty decent price. This Arizona run defense has been pretty good this year, but they're also missing Calais Campbell. It's not a unit that I'm like super scared of or whatever. I will definitely play McCoy this week. I'm not super thrilled about him in daily leagues. So, I think you could avoid that there maybe. But he's also a solid play, and he might score a touchdown. Darren Sproles is probably going to be back this week. I'm not totally sure on that. So do check up on that if he's going to play or not. But if Sproles, let's say theoretically he's back, that limits some of McCoy's effectiveness. That limits some of his passing game reps, which, that's not good for him. So I don't know. I know some people are optimistic about Sproles playing. I'm not sure if Sproles does play for him himself. He's a guy who's, he's going to catch passes and all that. But so maybe on DraftKings you're interested in playing him. But in the end, I still think that what we saw from him the first few weeks of the season, when he was really exploding, scoring a lot of points, I think you can kind of forget about that at this point. That's not the reality. That was just kind of, while he's definitely a really good role player in this Eagles offense, he's not a consistent every week fantasy option. And so I don't know. I mean, I still think he's more of a desperation play than like an every week flex play. That's just my opinion for when Sproles gets back. The receivers in Philly are kind of a mess. I mean, Macklin is a guy who's seen a lot of targets, but he's been pretty inefficient with them, even though he's had some really productive weeks. I am paying up for him on DraftKings. He's actually only 5,500, I think. So he's one I'll stack him and Foles there. If he gets too expensive, I'm not crazy about it. But this Arizona pass defense, I think it's a week that you can exploit. Them because they have not been very good against receivers. Patrick Peterson isn't playing well. Antonio Cromartie isn't playing well. Their safeties, Matthew is not the player we saw last year because he's coming back from an ACL injury. And Deion Buchanan, he's a rookie and he's better at defending the run than he is dropping back in pass coverage. So that's why they give up some big plays there. And yeah, so it's you can chase points with the Eagles pass catchers, and so Macklin is the easy one. Then it gets a little difficult whether you're going to play Jordan Matthews, whether you're going to play Riley Cooper. Their roles have always kind of been a little up in the air. I think we know Matthews plays that big slot receiver role, and he had the week where he scored 2 touchdowns, but other than that, he hasn't really been super usable all across leagues. And so I don't know. I don't know whether you're going to play someone like him. I mean, he's cheap on daily leagues, but I still don't know if I'm going to chase those points. Riley Cooper is interesting because we know he has big playability. He can go in on those jump balls, plays deep down the field. We know Cooper can get those. That's what he did a lot last year. And he's done it a few times this year, despite being pretty terrible in other weeks, dropping a lot of passes. So Cooper is one that I'm not really interested in playing, even though this is a really good matchup. If you want to do it, you can, but I'm still, I don't know. I'm not really interested in it. And then that brings us to Zach Ertz. And Zach Ertz, I think, is a really sneaky play in daily leagues because he's super cheap. In Arizona, they can't cover the tight ends. That's something that's been consistent through 2 years now. I mean, they didn't do it well last year. They haven't done it very well this year in a lot of spots. So I think Ertz is a really strong play in that aspect, in that, he's still a big play threat. He's a guy who he can get it done down the field. So I think he can take advantage of some of these linebackers, Deion Buchanan, some of these safeties, and that aggressiveness that the Cardinals play with. That's why they give up those big plays to tight ends. I think that you're looking at a big week for Ertz. And like I said, Jordan Reed was one tight end that I mentioned is really cheap in daily leagues that you can roll with. I think Ertz is a similar player in that vein. So, yeah, I think Ertz is a big play this week. TJ looks like he might not make it today. Been waiting on him to reply to the invite and everything. So haven't heard back from him yet. And in that case, I think we're going to go ahead and close this show out. We hit the hour point here, and it wasn't a big question week this week anyway. So I think we're going to go ahead. I'm going to close this show out now. Appreciate everybody sticking with us for another week of hot takes and hot cakes. Always fun to talk with you guys on Sunday mornings. You guys usually send us a lot of questions. We really appreciate that. We love to answer fantasy questions and everything. Always enjoy interacting with the viewers and, getting to promote Sportable, which Sportable.is, great website. Dan and I and TJ all love writing there. We get to do a lot of fun stuff on Sportable, including this show. So we really appreciate everybody, joining us this week. And, you can follow Dan at Dan Schneier NFL. You can follow me if you want to at Matt Harmon _BYB, which is the nice lower third there. So, yeah, we love the show. We love interacting with you guys, and we really appreciate you coming out for another week. All right, everyone. Have a good Sunday. Good luck to all your fantasy teams.